Tired of the brutal feast or famine cycle? You're not alone. The gut-wrenching feeling of a full pipeline one month and an empty calendar the next costs builders not just money, but ultimately their peace of mind. This isn't a lead problem, it's a systems problem. In this episode, I sit down with Tim Berry, a Sandler sales trainer and former construction business owner who has scaled and sold 6 businesses. After analyzing the sales process of over 312 builders, I can tell you that the patterns Tim identifies are universal. He pulls back the curtain on why the traditional show up and throw sales pitch fails and how to replace it with a systematic, trust-based approach he calls the Neutron bomb, a system designed to eliminate the low-margin competition and leave only high-profit projects standing. This isn't just theory. Tim's perspective is forged from standing in the foyer, navigating the same challenges you face, and building multi-million-dollar construction businesses, all from the ground up. You're listening to Beyond the Bid, the show by Go First, where we share the systems, sales strategies, and practical AI for builders. Keep listening to learn how to win more of the right projects, boost profitability, and scale your company beyond the bid. Hey, Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Grant. I appreciate you having me on. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So I know we were just chatting off screen or off camera for a second about meeting that you just wrapped up right before this. But for those who, I guess, don't know you and who aren't involved in the group, can you kind of give us a little bit of a background or backstory on, that what seemingly was to take your word, a badass group? Seemed really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. The group that I'm talking about, there's a networking organization called Success Champion Networking that I'm part of. I run one of the chapters, and what makes it interesting and unique is that it's B2B business owners only group. And the interesting part about it, and the team that I've facilitated, we've now got 21 members just in my chapter. There's over 350 of them around the country, but is that we are real advocates for each other. And so when you understand someone's business intimately, right? And I'll give you an example. So like I respect and I know you well enough to be able to advocate for you. So when I hear other business owners in my world that are my clients, for example, and they are saying, hey, I'm really looking to be a podcast guest, so if you know anybody that does that type of work, please make that connection. So now, because Grant, I think you're super cool. Now I'd go, okay, hey, great. I've got exactly the guy for you. And then I would make that connection, but it's not just, I call it putting people up on a tee, right? So in golf, where you take the ball and you're at the tee box and you put that thing up there nice, you grab Big Bertha out of the bag and then you smash the snots out of that ball that's sitting up on the tee, right? It's bombs away. Well, setting your networking partner, your referral partner up on a tee isn't just, hey, I'm going to shoot over this guy's email to your text or this woman's email to your text. When I make that connection, it's going to be, hey, Grant, this is a great guest opportunity. I know this person well. I know they have high character, they're high energy, they'll deliver amazing value to your audience. And this is a guy a person you should have on the podcast. Furthermore, I'm going to go to my connection and I'm going to be like, hey, Grant's my podcast guy. Like, do right by Grant in every way, shape, and form. And that's setting you both up for success. And that's what I call setting them up on a tee. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. I like that analogy. I think it really hits home. And, in like construction, well, really well, but in construction, there's this topic of referrals and reputation, and it gets tossed around a lot. And I don't think a lot of people actually have a good system of, actually connecting the dots, connecting to really reputable people, in a seamless manner. It sounds like that group is one of the ways that you do that.
Yeah, well, in my world of sales training, for sure. In the construction world, think about this. I owned construction companies for 15 years in Chicago. I owned 3 of them. And we were getting great referrals out. But that was also because I was explaining to my customers who were amazingly happy with what we were doing. Here's what a good referral looks like. Here's what setting me up on the tee with your neighbor who I'm going to go have, a 17-year-old hang the door hanger on their storm door or whatever. This is what this is what a good referral is in my world. Are you willing to do that? Right. And being explicit in what excellence looks like with my own client does two things. One, it assigns roles. Like I expect that when I make a client unbelievably happy because I made their house look great, and I did it in honorable and I did the job in integrity, and the experience was excellent, then I want them to tell their neighbors, right? And so that's when you set expectations for what excellence looks like, then you're not just relying on hope. Like, oh, I hope that the 17-year-old hangs that door hanger and it happens to go across the street to say, hey, Grant, your roof and your windows and your siding look great. Who'd you get it for? I don't know, some contractor dude that took care of me, right? That's not how you get good, effective, and efficient referrals.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the current status quo is, that door hanger or dropping somebody some pamphlet on, a windshield. And, I think that kind of opens up the main topic for today, which is really like having these true and sometimes hard conversations that ultimately help you build trust with your client, with your network.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, think about this in the home building or home remodeling world. Think about how insane this is, right? Like, I grew up in a world where I was told that it was both dangerous to talk to strangers and it was rude to talk about money. And now we're in sales, which you're literally required to go talk to strangers about their money, right? So the irony is there. And then, of course, it is scary to talk to strangers. Most people don't. We live in homes, then we protect them with guns, for heaven's sakes, because we don't want strangers or danger to enter our home. But then we have to invite salespeople into our home, right? And that's, again, crazy. It defies all logic. And so being able to address that early on, it helps diffuse that tension, right? And I sold probably $75 million of home improvements in the home, windows, roofing, siding. I owned a company that did basement waterproofing and structural foundation repairs. I built custom homes in another company. I've got a lot of experience with standing in that foyer and trying to figure out how to build trust, right? And I think what made me different and made me memorable as a salesperson is two things. One, I respected the fact that this stranger invited me, another stranger, into their home. Yeah. So say it out loud, right? Like, take the pressure off. Hey, I know you may be feeling anxious because I'm a stranger standing in your foyer right now. And there's a little bit of comedic relief that you release a little bit of that tension. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, like, to give, I had my kitchen and my upstairs remodeled last summer, and I can't tell you how many contractors we had in. 0 did that. And I think we ended up actually just doing it ourselves. But, if we had conversations like that were real, human to human, it very well could have gone differently.
Yeah, here's other things to think about. It's like they don't do Dateline gotcha TV shows about librarians or, gas station attendants, right? It's always about nasty contractors stealing people's money. Yeah. Right. So that's for sure what everyone knows and has been seen the TV shows and even may have a neighbor that has been burned by an unscrupulous contractor. And I'm not saying that most contractors are that way. I'm saying most contractors are not. But all contractors suffer from that stigma that there is, something nefarious and dangerous about doing business with them, because it does happen, right? And so being able to step into that again, those negative thoughts and diffuse that bomb before it goes out does elevate you in regards to trust. Like, hey, look, I understand it it's a little scary to invite someone who you don't know to talk about spending thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of your dollars on your castle. And I appreciate you just inviting me in, right? And so I'm going to do my best to not make this meeting today about me. I want to find out about what you want.
I love it.
What your vision in your home is going to look like.
Oh, I think so many people can learn from that. It's like you said, it's diffusing a bomb before the person even sees the timer. It's really just leveling the playing field. And it is such a crazy environment too. Like you said, you're bringing you as a contractor are literally invited into a stranger's home, and then most people go right into, oh, this is why my company is best in class, is all the crap that we do. And very few actually dedicate time to asking the client ultimately what their vision is, or what the must-haves are for their project.
100%. Well, the fun part is that, again, one of the disarming statements I would make is I would ask the question. I would say, hey, Grant, I'm supposing I'm not the first person you've invited in the house. Is that right? And you would be like, yep. So, okay, let me take a wild guess with what you heard in the other 3-hour appointments, right? They came in and they told you they were representing the greatest company in the history of home improvements, that they use the highest quality products. All of their people have gone through DNA testing and are, have been running the FBI database for, serial killers, and that, everything 100% of the time comes out at 150% above expectations, no matter what. And they're the greatest salesperson in the history of the world. Is that right? And they would laugh. They would laugh because they were like, oh yeah, I had to listen to a 3-hour presentation about how amazing XYZ, home improvements was. And I'd be like, yeah, you know what? Me too. Okay. Let's fast forward. Just assume I'm all those same things too. I'm the greatest and have the greatest products. It's really boring to talk about me. Is it all right if I ask you some questions about what you want to accomplish in this project? And they would it was like shooting fish in a barrel, because people were like, wait a minute, I get to not just go, oh yeah, I need 9 windows and a patio door, done. You're actually going to ask me questions about like more than point to the area you want me to fix, right? And it was like magic, because then they were actively participating as contributor into building the solution that they wanted. It had nothing to do with me.
That's amazing. Yeah. It's such a vital moment too, in terms of, if you can just get your ego out of the way, or get just everything that there is about your company out of the way, and just realize that this person's looking to solve a problem. That's the only thing they care about. They don't care about all the flashy, here's all the awards that we won. That's you. They're trying to solve their thing.
Right. Oh, 100%. Well, think about this, right? Like, you can go to pretty much anywhere and you can say you won an award from somebody, right?
Yeah.
And who cares? Because they give them out all the time to everybody. Like yesterday, the VMA, the Music Video Awards were on, right? Like there were 50 awards that were given out. So what? Big deal. You won one from, the Better Business Bureau. Oh, that's nice. Great. And I'm glad you won something from Angie's List. That's also cool. But I want to know, are you in it for me, or are you in it for you? And that's what I would always present. So that's how I would, the idea here is that in home improvement sales, for example, or even when you're building custom homes, right, you need a deep, meaningful bond, and you need to build that trust, because it's a giant thing. You're messing with people's castles.
Yep.
For all of time, people have defended their castles to the death. And so this is an important thing for them. It's not transactional. And if it is transactional, mind you, if it's only a price thing, I'm not for you anyway, because for sure you're going to go, you're way too high. price wise, and it's not going to work. So I'd just rather weed that one out relatively quickly.
Oh, sure. So that brings up a pretty interesting point too. I think so many contractors and just people in the trades nowadays really experience this phenomenon like feast or famine, right? Of like, you have so much work, when times are good, I guess, if you want to just wrap it up under that, if you might even break your current systems. Like your pipeline is full, your people are busy, you're fat and happy, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the reverse of that is where you are really struggling to find work. And, no matter how much you want to pay Meta, and it's still, your ad traffic, your leads coming in, it's still just a sparse wasteland. With the companies that you've built, I think, one of the true takeaways is you have to kind of grow out and outlast that cycle of feast or famine. You have to be very consistent with not only the quality work that you're outputting, but also, the target audience and the people that you really want to, do that work for. Have there been any ways that you found, creative or not, that really have just helped you kind of get past that?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty important point to make for sure. So I'm glad you brought this. I think that the greatest sales movie that there ever was Gary Glenn Ross.
Yes.
And there's an idea in there that ABC, always be closing, right? And as a business owner, I think that we've got to continue to think like that. And so that means that you've got to scale appropriately, and you always have to be thinking of, people, equipment, and processes, right, at all times. And so if you're going to go, full tilt towards we're going to scale sales, right, you've got to be able to support it, because what you don't want is the quality to dip as you are scaling, because you brought in less experienced workers to do the installation, right?
Absolutely.
And so the idea is that you've got to, it's almost like smoking meats. I am a massive fan of smoking brisket, for example. I live in Texas, and it's like smoking barbecue down here is like a religion.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I've got an offset wood fed smoker. It's an Oklahoma Joe's. It's about 100 years old. It's ugly as sin. And I make amazing briskets. And here's what's interesting. In the beginning, it takes a lot of effort to get the fire at that 200 to 220 degrees. And once you've got it there, you got to throw a log on every once in a while, because over time, the log is going to burn out and disintegrate into ash. Mm-hmm. So if you're not careful with putting the next log, the right size log, on at the right time, your temperature gauge on your smoker is going to go, to 300, and then it's going to drop down to 150, and you're going to be fighting with that thing forever. And so for smoking meats, you've got to figure out that perfect size log and cut them that way before you start using them. And then every 30 minutes you throw that thing on there. So right when the new log is finally starting to come to heat, it's equal to the log that's just about to be dead, right?
I don't think I've ever heard a better analogy. That nailed it. That was so well done. I don't know if you said that before or if that just came to you, but that was gold.
Well, and Grant, that's how you have to do this with your business, right? You don't want to flame out too early, because you can go, hey, I'm gonna hire all these guys, and maybe in the good times you can keep, say, 10 or 15 crews going, right? But if you stop prospecting, if you stop closing business, then all of a sudden now you've got people sitting around, right? And so you've got to be wrestling with either layoffs, or you've got to find something different for them to do. And in the beginning of my construction career, and I'm talking way back when, what I did to solve that was I went from like the first company that I started in the construction business was in 95. And what I decided to do was I'm going to do replacement windows only, right? And we did replacement windows because they're giant margin. I was using, and you can sell them you can sell them like candy because people have old windows, and I was living in Chicago at the time. So like if you have bad windows and it's December, it's freezing in your house. And in the summertime when it's 105, it's 105 in your house. So you want good windows. So Windows was great, except for in that first year, I started the business in the spring. By December, well, what happens in December in Chicago? It's 9 degrees outside and Christmas is here. You don't want to tear out your windows. And so I ended up losing like 3 really good crews that first year. And so what I did to make up for it the next year is I started another company. I founded another company that built custom homes. And in September, I brought the excavator out to dig the hole. And in September, I poured the foundation. And in, October, at the end of October, it started getting cold. And then we got the shell up. And then by the time December came, when everybody was like, oh, it's too cold to do windows, I took those carpenters, because they were carpenters, and I threw them on the inside. And I go, all right, guys, insulate, drywall, get all the stuff done. And that's how in that year 2, I was able to keep those things. So I put the log in right at the right time.
Yeah.
And so right when one dried up, then I was able to pivot those very same crews into the warm house. And then they worked there until March when things started to thaw out. And then guess what goes crazy in March in Chicago? The window business. And then I went bonkers with windows. And now I had 2 companies going, not just one. But that's how I put that log in there to keep the temperature right at 220.
And with, I'm sure, a large percentage of the same crew. That's amazing.
Yes. Yeah. And again, scaling as we got bigger, I had to really change the way that I was training people, because what I was doing in the beginning is I was on the job site, I would have a supervisor on the job site for sure that knew what I wanted, but he was busy. He was like a player coach. He was like managing and playing at the same time. So you can't quite be a leader all the way,
right,
when you're sitting up on the, pump jacks hanging the siding as well, right? So I would go and I would teach everybody, here's the way of excellence in your role. Even if you were a gopher, even if you were the one that was throwing roofing shingles up on the roof, this is what excellence looks like in this role.
Oh, wow.
So by empowering everybody and then I just let them go, right? I don't need to know. You don't have to do things exactly 100% of the way I would do them, because that's micromanaging. Mm-hmm. And as it turns out, when I empowered them with training them in the ways of excellence and then letting them go figure out the best way to do it, even if it was different from the way I would have done it, I just want the result to be excellent, right? That's all I care about. I don't care about how you get there. I just want the result to be excellent. I want that client to go, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I'm so happy in business with you.
If you know Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL guy, he has a very similar he had a very similar management style to his team.
Yep. Yeah. And I love Jocko for sure. And that's, I had to figure that out, because in the beginning, I had 70 people working for me, and my phone would ring at 6:01 a.m. and it wouldn't stop ringing until 11 o'clock at night. And I was picking it up 100 times a day with people saying, hey boss, what about this? What about this? What about this? And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to shoot myself.
Yeah.
Because I had PTSD, because I was like, when you lose a limb, you have phantom limb syndrome, where you can feel your, arm that's no longer there.
Uh-huh.
It was like that with my cell phone. If my cell phone didn't go off every 9 minutes, I was flipping out, because I'm like, well, it should be going off. I think I heard it going off. And that's not a way to live. That's working in the business, not working on the business.
Yeah. Getting like phantom vibrations in your pocket.
I'm not even kidding. It would wake me up in the middle of the night, and it was wrecking me. It was wrecking my health. It was wrecking my relationships with my family. I didn't get to do anything fun. And it was not a good way to be a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of like getting past that, did you just have, it sounds like, you started so well with like training on excellence and what that looks like, and having your team really find their own path there. But did you implement any ways of like, consistently training on that as, iterations come, as, your systems change, whatever it is?
Yeah. So whenever there was going to be a change in procedure, right, whatever it was, whether it was for my finished carpenters that would be doing, multi-part crown moldings, or whether it was a window installer or one of my roofing crews, right?
Yeah.
Whenever there would be a process that we noticed would have to change, then I would train everybody all at once. I would bring all of the gophers, right? Gopher is the one who, they're schlubbing boxes of coil nails to the installers, and running around making sure that there's enough shingles in a particular area of the roof or whatever.
Sure.
I would bring all 6 of those guys into a meeting and say, all right, here's the new standard, here's the new expectation, here's the new process, and this is what excellence looks like, and this is what you'll be held accountable to. And then that went by role, right? So, if there were people who were on a window crew, I would have, one guy tearing windows out, another guy actually installing plumbing, shimming, and insulating the new opening.
Yeah.
And then one guy would be on the outside, another guy would be on the outside capping with the aluminum and caulking and flashing and all that other stuff.
Oh yeah.
But whenever something would change, like, oh, hey, you guys are caulking the weep holes at the bottom of the window. Oh my God, and then I get a call, like the homeowner's like, hey, it's raining in my house through my brand new windows that I just spent 30 grand on, and then I look out and I'm like, how is that even possible? And then you go outside and you're like, oh, it was a process part. Like somebody caulked the stinking weep holes, goodness. And then I'd bring all the capping guys out and go, all right, here's what we saw on this job, and this is what the fix is, and whatever. And we could nip it in the bud that way.
I think that's where a lot of people, actually, a lot of business owners I've seen and talked to, kind of drop the ball. Is, they experience a mistake or an issue on the project, and they, go and try and figure out a better solution right there, instead of, actually taking the time to document and understand, how did this come to be, and how do we make sure that this is, ultimately going to not only be solved, but, what the ripple effect of it needs to be in a much more positive manner than, just, oh, quick fix, we're good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's a matter of intent, right? If it was a willful misapplication of whatever it is, right? Versus, oh, they just didn't know. It is different. If they're willfully doing things the wrong way because they're stuck in their old ways of doing things, and they're not willing to adapt to the, my way of what excellence looks like. You can't fix a will problem. That's someone who needs to be managed in some other company. Yeah. And I won't put up with that, right? Because that's a will thing. You're willingly not achieving excellence because you're not willing to learn something new. But if it's just a skill thing, the skill thing is easy enough to teach, right? And we're all learning this stuff together, right? If there was any illusion that I was perfect in this journey to building these companies, oh my goodness, I couldn't tell you how wrong of an idea that is. I screwed up so many things. I can't even believe that people extended me grace. But when you do screw things up, and this is like this for being a business owner, or being a husband, or being a father, when you screw something up, just like own up to it, right? And then make it right afterwards. And I think that's if you stand in integrity with your customer, for example, and something goes wrong and you go, oh, I can't believe all right, we caulked over the weep holes, Grant, I apologize. This is what we're going to do to fix this and make it whole. And then I'll take responsibility. Yep. Your wood sills got wet. And if we find out that there's going to be any warping on those, then I'll make sure I bring in my finished carpenter, and he'll do new sills for you and whatever. If they're going to be fine, right? If they're just painted white and you just wipe the water off, then it's no harm, no foul. But if there's a problem, then I'm going to make sure and step up and handle that appropriately. You'll be much happier that something went wrong and I stood in integrity to solve it, without trying to deflect, without being a jerk about it, without being mean or cynical or whatever, right? If I just handle it professionally and calmly, like the customer you're gonna feed on that. And so even in a mistake, which does happen on jobs, even in a mistake, you will have looked at me and gone, yeah, that was awesome. I can't believe that happened that way.
Oh yeah. That's the thing, I think, because, you said it earlier, whether it's somebody's neighbor or a friend of a friend, there's always these horror stories of people getting burned. And it's usually because of that. It's usually because when things go wrong, people don't own it. And they don't really, that if you just want to think of like the customer experience, if you think it's bad when you have a problem, when you lose your solutions to your potential solutions to the problem, then you're starting over in a worse position.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. 100%. I would always used to tell this to my kids, when they were on the wrong side of an argument, I would be like, hey, put the shovel down. Like, you're digging your own hole. Stop. Like, all you got to do is put the shovel down. Right. I know there's a hole. I'm not saying that you're going to bury yourself in it, but definitely stop digging. Just own it. Just own it and step into it like an adult with integrity. And that's what separated us in almost every instance with our customers. We would just live in integrity, and that worked out real well for us.
Oh yeah. So I guess, how did you go from owning these different companies to what you're doing now? That transition seems really interesting.
Well, the short of the story is that I started my first company when I was 14, and I've scaled and sold 6 businesses since then.
Wow.
And about 15 years ago, I sold the construction companies. I closed one of them, but I sold the other 2. And I was a mercenary for a while. So I'd go into a business that needed the sales department overhaul because they were struggling on the revenue side of things. And I'd do like a 2-year stint for an equity piece, turn them around, and then I'd turn them around and I'd sell the equity in it. And that's how I'd get a ton of cash. So I did that for about 10 years. But one of my close friends bought a Sandler sales training franchise. And he was like, you gotta do this, dude. Like, this is exactly for you. And I said, oh, that sounds awesome. He goes, I'll give you half of my franchise. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, how much fun are we going to have just going out there and slaying together? And he goes, but you have to move to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I have nothing against Fort Wayne, Indiana. I don't. I've been there 100 times, if not more. And it's a lovely town. But I was moving to Fort Wayne, Indiana from Chicago. You would have an easier chance of disemboweling me than getting me to move to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And so he goes, all right, well, I get it, but he connected me with the franchise and I looked at it and I prayed about it. And I thought, this is pretty cool. I could do this. And so that's where I've been for the last 10 years. I've been helping everybody else scale their businesses through sales training, leadership training, and executive coaching. So I've got a Sandler franchise, and that's what I do currently.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like you found it in the first, we'll call it like a third of your career, I guess. You really made your own fit, but now it's like you truly it found you.
Yeah,
that's pretty remarkable.
100%. What I find to be rewarding about it is that my customers, my clients are all over the place. I've got publicly traded companies, that are global organizations that have, multi-billion-dollar market caps on, the NASDAQ. And then I've got individual sole proprietors. And then I've got companies that do 50 million in revenue and everybody in between. Right. And what my real passion is I want my clients tend to be high energy. They want to scale. They want to take on the world. And I love the underdog. Right. So I know that the government got to pick the winners and the losers during COVID. Like, there were essential and non-essential businesses. This is not a political discussion in any way, shape, or form. But what I'm saying is that the government chose who was essential and who was not essential. And in small businesses, there was an oversized impact on the small businesses, right? Not the Walmarts or the, Teslas or the Googles or the trillion-dollar companies. Like, they were not impacted at all. They grew, right? It's the small businesses that really struggled and hit hard. And so, like, my pets, my favorite clients are the little guys, because to be able to help someone go from, say, 250,000 in revenue to 2 million to that business owner, that's like a life-changing deal for them.
Oh yeah.
And to see the change in their lives, and what an unbelievable impact I have by training those types of clients, that's where I get my most emotional that's where my emotional apex is at, right? It's like, I helped the little guy scale from nothing to, or from small to huge in their minds.
Yeah.
And then the world is their oyster after that. I always think of Tony Montana, and Scarface, like, that's a say hello to my little friend. And and I'm the little friend. Like, I'm the one that, like, helps them mow down the bad guys, right? And
yeah,
and so maybe I'm romanticizing my own impact on these, but anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense too. Just, as a small business owner, there's so many hurdles. Sales is a huge one, bringing in, consistent revenue. And, if you're not familiar with Sandler or different sales methodologies or sales as a whole, it's such an eye-opening experience, like trying to wing a conversation with a potential client, and then seeing someone who has had that professional experience and that training come in and, really own the conversation, like have a tried and true sales process. I honestly can't really think of a more important thing as a small business owner than to really get, your sales process and just an understanding of how you fit into, your client's life, and also, just having a sales process, a sales methodology, a way of speaking, a way of presenting yourself.
Yeah, I think it's for a couple of reasons too, Grant. Think about this. Like, everybody knows the business owner that could sell ice to an Eskimo, right? But if that person can't duplicate what they're doing, no matter how many salespeople you have, like, they're never going to be that owner, right? The owner has positional authority with the clients or the prospects in the first place, right? You walk in and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm the owner of the company, right? They know, like, you've got a different elevated position just because of your title. And if you don't have a rock solid sales process that is duplicable and one that you can teach other people, you're sunk. Like, you can only scale to as much as you can sell. Now, you can make the arguments like, hey, I am one of those guys that can sell ice to an Eskimo. But the most beautiful part is that I also can take a regular salesperson who is waiting maybe for an inbound marketing lead, and I can turn them into an absolute assassin by being themselves, by being open and honest, by building trust, by gaining equal business stature with the prospect and setting that tone for that consultation to the point where it's going to come to a meaningful end. And price is not part of that. Price is only a little part of that equation, because we know that the customer will spend more if they believe they're getting more and they trust the salesperson more. They'll pay more for it. For their own peace of mind. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it really does.
And so if you're a small business owner and you're like the bee's knees, right, and you're just murdering it out there, you got to think about, here comes the smoking meats analogy, right?
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to cook 2 briskets next time? How are you going to cook 3 briskets? Like, you can't, right? You just can't. You can't stay up 13 hours for a smoke is too long. You will not be able to do 3 in a row. You either have to get a bigger smoker, or you have to teach someone what excellence looks like and throwing the stinking log on every 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. So if you're going to scale, if you're going to go from that, say, 250,000 in revenue to the 5 million, it just can't be you, the player coach, running operations, working in the business. You've got to be able to rely on a process by which everybody can, thrive and grow it exponentially for you.
I love that. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I know in a previous conversation we had, you dropped this coin of like the orchestra conductor, basically that, changing roles from just a solo guitarist to the actual conductor of a symphony.
Yeah. Sales is, and this is what I think I said in our last conversation, being in sales is like being the conductor in an orchestra. And if you go on to YouTube, just Google the New York Philharmonic or the Chicago Symphony Orchestra or the Philadelphia Philharmonic, right? And watch what the actual conductor does. There's winds, there's woods, there's percussion, there's all these amazing, unbelievably talented musicians out there. But the quality of the production is hinged on if your orchestra conductor knows what the heck they're doing.
That's right.
And the orchestra conductor in the world of business is the salesperson, right? Now, if you're a business owner, if you're a player coach and you are the business owner and you're also selling, that's fine. But you've got to remember, you've got to pay attention to the entire orchestra at the same time, right? You've got to make sure that the volume is right, and you've got to tamp it down. If somebody's going off on the flutes and they're playing off key, like the orchestra has to, you've got to nip that thing in the bud. And it's the same thing in sales. You've got to go in there, you got to build trust. You have to set the tone for what your customer wants to accomplish, and then you've got to artfully negotiate that conversation to a meaningful end. Right? You're not getting paid just to have nice conversations. If that was the case, millions of salespeople would be worth millions and millions of dollars, and they're not, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Nice is not what gets you the sale. Trust is what gets you the sales, and that's what is, trust plus being able to co-manufacture a solution with your customer in their budget, in their time frame, and with the level of quality that they're comfortable with, right? So that's a very give and take, intimate conversation. And that's why I think trust is so important to build.
So for those listening or watching or however you're consuming this, do you have one action item or one takeaway that can help them kind of evolve from that owner operator to that conductor, and just, get a better handle on training and there's...
Yeah, I think the easy way is like, yep, definitely call me and we'll talk about it, about what that looks like. But I would say, if you're going to focus on one thing, right, is you want to change your mindset. You've got to flip the switch in your head. As an owner operator, you've got to zoom out and start thinking more like a master chef that's, smoking Texas barbecue.
Yeah.
And so you've got to, like, I used all these metaphors of symphony orchestras and all this other stuff. It is very true. You've got to align in your head what your main purpose is. Do you want like low margin, high maintenance clients, or do you want high margin, low maintenance clients? And then you've got to spend time investing in them appropriately.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's there's an art form to sales. And I'd say this in a sales training capacity from my viewpoint, right? There's two types of sales development. One is the intellectual. And with that, I tell people all the time, hey, go on Amazon and go get the David H. Sandler book. It's titled, You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. Right? It's a great title, and it's true. But you can go and you can intellectually know exactly what I'm talking about by just getting that book. It's like $30 on Amazon, right? And you can go, oh, well, now I know exactly how to sell. But there's a second piece, and this is where I come in. I'll teach the intellectual piece for sure, but the art form is applying it artfully.
Mm-hmm.
And that's doing it conversationally. And that means, you've got to have a lot of things in play. You've got to have high emotional EQ as the salesperson. You've got to be empathetic. You've got to be able to read other people's social cues and their communication styles. You've got to understand people's temperaments and modify your own. So if you're flying around with your hair on fire, going Mach 2 as generally as your temperament, but you meet someone that is more subdued and introverted, if you don't figure that out real quick and modify appropriately, then you're never going to be able to build trust because they're going to think you're bananas.
Yep.
Right? Now, conversely, if you happen to have a more introverted temperament, that's totally fine. But you've got to speed it up if you're talking to someone that's going Mach 3 with their hair on fire. And there's an art form to that, and it just happens over time. So I guess my answer to your question is I don't care if you don't do sales training with me, but if you're looking to scale on that spot, like, you should talk to a sales pro, someone that knows what in God's name they're doing, and make sure that it's not just going in there and vomiting out features and benefits of your company and why you're cool and why you're stuff, because nobody gives a crap about that at all. And that's the overarching theme is I tell salespeople on day one of training with me, I say, your prospect doesn't care about you, your company, your industry, your equipment, your product. They don't care about your ferret, your mother, your kids, or anything else. They don't care about any of those things. They care about what they care about. And your job as the sales pro is to help them discover that they have a problem that they want to solve, and you either are or are not the one that they're going to go on that journey with to solve it. And that's literally day one. I tell salespeople this. So sometimes they think I'm nuts, but it's 1,000% true.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it can be a hard lesson to hear that, the product and everything that you spent, all your marketing, everything you've spent so much time on, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is perception, the perspective of your client and the problems that they're, experiencing.
Well, think about this, Grant. The fact remains this, is that 90+% of sales, think about this. The mindset is this. We tend to trust people that are like us. We tend to like people that are like us. And we will certainly buy from people that are most like us, that can connect with us, right? And so, again, it doesn't matter what your natural temperament is. You could be a type A, lunatic, or you can be a librarian, introverted, data-centered person, right? The challenge for the business owner is you've got to be able to sell to all of them. Yeah. Because you don't want to be disqualified just because your salespeople are too busy talking about the low E glass and the argon gas between the panes of the glass, by the way, which everyone has, right? It's not like there's low E glass. Oh, it's low emissivity. And who cares? Everybody has it, right? It's all, and the quicker you focus on building that trust and that relationship, that foundation for honest, open conversation, that's how you scale your business. You teach your salespeople how to do that.
I love it. Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Tim. This has been incredibly insightful. I've learned quite a few things. How can people find you? How can people get connected with you?
I've got you can find me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is Tim Barry, Barry, executive coach. If you search in the LinkedIn profile, I also have a YouTube channel where I run a weekly free 30-minute sales training program webinar, and it's called Sales Lab Live. And if you go to YouTube and search in the search bar for Sandler Training of Fort Worth, you'll find I've got now 21 episodes of Sales Lab Live, and it's free. I don't do any selling. It's not the purpose of the session. I'm giving hardcore real life business sales strategies, tactics, and best practices that you can use whether you ever contract to do business with me and training ever again. It doesn't matter, but all of them are up there for free, and so they can have at it.
Yeah, definitely check that out. I'll definitely have to stop by and watch a few of those.
Heck, this episode is going on there for sure too. I'm gonna promote you as much as you promote me.
I appreciate that. But yeah, thank you again. This has been incredibly insightful. I really appreciate your time, and I know everybody else does too.
Great, you're the best, and I wish you the best on the show. I know this is a passion project of yours, and you're an absolute killer anyway. So I know this thing is going to go viral, and I appreciate you inviting me in. I really do.
Oh, thank you. Well, hey, you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll chat soon.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, that's a wrap. My only goal with these videos is to give you actionable systems that you can use to build a more profitable business. If you found this valuable, please share it with another who needs to hear it. That's all I ask. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss another episode. Until next time, remember, systems, scale, success. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Beyond the Bid. If you've already subscribed to our podcast, consider sharing this episode with another contractor, builder, or remodeler who you think could benefit from some of the takeaways.